What's good, my boy? I'm gonna try to do this in a concise video. Originally, I was writing this as an essay. That's what I still plan to do. But I'm having a hard time really organizing all of my thoughts around this topic because of just the vastness of it, really. But it touches on vice and virtue, it touches on pleasures, it touches on this whole concept of consuming versus creating, as well as the pretentiousness that comes within these things. In this video, I'm going to mainly be talking about video games, uh, the internet, its culture, the space that I spent almost all of my youth in and all of my teenage years. And I escaped it through becoming extremely pretentious against the people that were older than me, that are still in these circles, in this pleasure. All right, and I got a couple bullet points for this. So if you see me looking away or stopping to think, it's just because I'm trying to articulate this properly without really, and I don't really want to insult anybody in this. In a lot of my older videos, my very first videos, this was like my first realization, was this great break between worlds that I was pulled in between. We have certain words that you call it now, phrases if you will, like chronically online or whatever caricatures people try to ascribe to this, but it's a much more complicated phenomena than people make it out to be. As a society, it's hard to deny that it's becoming a lot more consumerist in nature. That is the predominant thing, whether it is consumer in the sense of like food and hedonism, sex, and those types of like really easily identifiable physical things. Or on the other hand, what we're going to be talking about in this, which is like the online communities, the online fandoms, these video games with these vast worlds and stuff like that, that you can get sucked into, drawn into, and it can almost be like a replacement for real life. But at the same time, I'm really conflicted because this is a fairly recent thing. If we're really talking about the scope of human history here, this really wasn't a challenge. Like, you had people who would shut themselves in rooms with books, or like you had that level of escapism. But now it's not just, and I don't want to just narrate this as like some sort of sinister thing that's been pushed on us by some sort of technocratic elites to enslave us or anything like that. I'm really trying to avoid the conspiratorial things and all of that, and really just ask questions to those who are in this, and really for myself. So, a couple things that I figured to start this off was, I asked myself the question in terms of video games and the internet. There are several statistics we could go by. We could go by the statistics of people who use the internet and don't, which I feel like that's not needed. We basically know who, for the most part, uses the internet. The second statistic is, you could say, like people who just use their phone for the internet versus like people who have computers, consoles, and all of these things. But that's irrelevant as well. But the main statistic I chose was that of people who play video games versus don't play video games. And for that, I found a lot of conflicting things. the only thing I could really seem to find was the statistic for the number of internet users who play video games, which that one is 83%, 83.6 to be exact, but I'll just say 83% of internet users. Then I found a couple other numbers, like more just like generic numbers, which those were kind of around like 3+ billion, in between 3 and 4 billion people, right, out of the 8 something billion on the planet. And I guess that takes into account all the different people in like third world countries or that don't have access. But this whole video, I want to state the president that I'm talking only about like first world things here, because this is a very first world problem, right? Or if you want to call it that, because we're really going to be asking the question of, is it a really big problem or not? When I played video games, and I've said this numerous times, so this might be repetitive to those who have watched my channel, my game was World of Warcraft. I liked Lord of the Rings, that type of stuff as well on the side. But I played World of Warcraft for a majority of my free time, almost all of it, right? Every once in a while, I would be pulled by some friends to go do something here, hang out, or I would go see family. But over the course of acquiring more and more freedom from my youth, as we, for the most part, all do, I gradually incorporated the games and the internet more and more into my time as that I had that autonomy of choice become free to me. And I didn't get in trouble, so I guess my family and friends, although they saw it as a waste of time, were kind of had the mindset of, oh, it's better for him to do that than like be out doing whatever, getting in trouble or whatever, right? But it wasn't just video games, and I find this to be the common occurrence for most people, right? It's not just video games, it's like the online culture. Like how normally now me or people who have kind of dropped video games and the online stuff, for me it was 2020 during COVID that really made me start to question these things, and then a whole online movement of like the self-help people, like within all that space, which that's a whole thing in its own. But I started to question, look around, and be like, man, there's more to life than this. But it was a hard thing to detach myself from, because again, in the real world, you have relationships. If you have a job or a career even, you have the community within that career, all the people you talk to, and then the stuff you do outside of work. There's places to hang out. There's what I like, this topic I've newly been introduced to, this idea of a transcendent third, of like say you have two people in a relationship. Usually the strongest relationships are those built off of a transcendent third. So it's not just you two and whatever y'all are coming up with in your brain. Usually it's some sort of game, media, interest, hobby, such and such, that y'all are both interested in, that you form that connection based off of. Sometimes the transcendent third can even be like something like experience in history, if you've known them for long enough, and you have all these like connected experiences that you can talk about, draw from, or just have like that almost metaphysical understanding that each other are, oh yeah, we cut from the same cloth, like that type of thing. But for a lot of people, what I see the transcendent third is this kind of one of these vices. Primarily, the internet, its culture, its topics, in certain video games and stuff like that. Again, to make this contrast really apparent, like within the real world, say you're working a job and someone spills coffee on themselves, or does something embarrassing, or you accomplish like a good project, or you get a really good day of work in, or a friend or family's birthday, or some sort of holiday where you all have a big party in your town. I live in a smaller town, so this is a lot more frequent that this happens. Big cities, you're kind of cut off a little bit from this tight community. But where I live, I'm fortunate enough to experience this. You all gather and you have your fun thing and you do fun stuff like karaoke or play games, cards, all these things, right? But within a lot of people in my generation, and this kind of leaches out to others at a certain degree, like I'd say like the millennials can relate more to us in this aspect than boomers or something like that, who don't really have a large percentage of chronically online people. But within this context of my generation in particular, a lot of our transcendent thirds are what's going on online. What is this streamer? What's the funny thing this streamer did this week? What's the new video game coming out? And it gets more and more niche as you go down. You'll have online communities like Discords and different things like this, and all of these topics and all of these interests. And it almost becomes like an over-socialization where you're just socializing so much, even more than you would in the real world. And I'll get to this in a little bit whenever I talk about like discovering other things than online stuff and the vastness and the beauty of all of that. But this sort of thing is validated now. And how is it validated? Well, you have a lot of people will say, oh, you're going to waste your time, you're going to waste your life doing this online stuff. But we know that's not true. You can get just about anything from these online paths, whether you're like addicted to video games. You'll see someone like Asmongold, or name whatever streamer you want, and they're multimillionaires. How'd they do it? From playing the video games and just taking advantage of the online system to where they make their income from it and they have no real motives to abandon it. So it's validated. You also have people like, and I'm going to use really generic examples here to appeal to most people, but people like Elon Musk, who talk about playing video games, the richest man in the world. It goes on and on and on, right? We have our podcasts to replace deep conversations with friends that you would have in real life. Again, we have our Discords and various social medias to kind of synthetically replace walking down the street or wandering upon people, meeting new people, etc. We have, again, the video games to replace the actual, like, tactile functions. Like, let's list off some real life things. You have certain pursuits, like the intellectual pursuits, that are vast and almost kind of forgotten now. And it's really weird that it's, like, there are movements where these things are revived and really talked about. They're niche, like they've always been niche, right? Like, that's why I'm kind of hesitant in this little ramble to really critique harshly any of these points. Because if you look back at history, there was always a class of people who just went, worked, and didn't really care about anything deeper. And a lot of people are troubled by the modern, this modern thing of like being chronically online, because with the internet, we're exposed to the vastness of the real world, of all of the possible pursuits in real life, from all the artistic pursuits, painting, any visual art, really, sculpting, music. I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on. Same thing with intellectual pursuits, learning things, reading, learning history, learning philosophy, learning about religion, which is something we'll come to later in this ramble. Learning a language, different schools of thought within these religions, and you have certain things like theology. You have other things like metaphysics and epistemology and all of these categories that take a great deal of time to not only learn what they are, but to plumb through the depths and all of these things. And it really, all this stuff comes down to, at the end of the day, the simplest variables you can put it in is time, creating versus consuming, right? And this is the great dilemma here. You have someone like how I used to be, where I would spend close to like 16, like let's say today's a Saturday. Let's say in the past when I was like 17 years old, or 16 really, I'd spend about 16 hours online if there wasn't some big thing going on with my friends, and most of them were in a sense doing similar stuff. 16 hours a day. Now, not all of them were buckled down on World of Warcraft, but they might have a Twitch stream going, playing NBA 2K or whatever, and browsing Twitter and whatnot. And that was kind of the norm. And again, my situation is kind of niche, because I wasn't really interested in sports. I wasn't interested in any sort of like extracurricular thing, like besides the video game and the online. I do see a healthy balance, if you want to call it that, formed with some people, like where they will go and they'll do something like a sport or something, and then do the online stuff and balance it, and there's kind of a multi-dimensional aspect to it. For me, it was very much just strictly that one thing. But still, there is a lack nowadays of this creative impulse. And it's so strange for me, this lack, to exist because of what we're exposed to with the internet. The vastness of possibility that we are exposed to within the internet itself. And because it is a purely time-driven thing and you only have so much of it, you really get to a point where you have to make choices. Like for me, I work in my shop building stuff. That's how I make my money. Different stuff I make. Irrelevant, really. But I do that primarily. Sometimes I'll go and I'll pick up jobs like construction jobs or carpentry jobs for individuals and stuff like that. But then I filled that void that I would have just went home from doing my work with video games, and I picked up several other interests that are like I gain resources, information about it from the internet, but primarily for me to get anything done in it, I have to shut the internet off and focus. So whether that be studying philosophy and theology and like language studies that go into that takes a lot of time, or trying to learn different instruments and doing musical stuff, or painting, any of these things require a great deal of time. And I picked them because they're all creative pursuits. When I do them, and not just practice, because there's practice in there. If I practice music, it just kind of, the sounds dissipate into the ether, if you will. But if I hit the record button and try to record a song, or I write down lyrics or whatever, or if I'm actually writing on like a novel or a book or something is being created there. And in a vain sense, if I were to die tomorrow and I have this accumulation of creations, whether it be some sort of a video or an essay, music, painting, whatever, there is a fragment, and I'm getting really into almost like atheistic territory here, which I am by no means an atheist, but I'm trying to make this a universal message. There's fragments of me left if I have over 200 videos on my channel yapping, even if they don't really mean anything, you are kind of, in a secular sense, immortalized. 100 years from now, these fragments could be seen by anybody as a mark, a legacy left. That's one of the beauties of the internet to be used, is that we have this free documentation that, let's say, 300 years ago, where more people didn't know how to read and write than actually did, that wasn't there. They just disappeared. Maybe their family kept their name going, but they just disappeared. So for me, that's one instance of motivation. The second instance is, again, a kind of prideful sense, and this touches on the pleasure, how I talked about at the very beginning of the video, and this is why I'm not trying to make super bold critiques here, is we have different sorts of pleasures. Again, we have sex, food, drugs, the video game stuff, the online scrolling stuff. But to be honest, you have to add in, and this is where I'll get into like my Catholic perspective with this, you have to also add in the satisfaction you get from creating something. That is a pleasure. And whether you want to talk about like the ethical standard of these pleasures, or the grading of these pleasures, if you will, that's a different conversation. But it is kind of like, in terms of reviewing religious dogma, like within Catholicism or Christianity as a whole, these creations are not what gains you favor by God. These creations are not the things that through theosis bring you into unity with God. And if some person who just plays video games 24/7 and doesn't know any of this, what these things are, or these beliefs, this is really confusing to them. But in this religious sense, and I'm trying to take the side of the chronically online people here without validating it completely, I have to be honest here. It's the same thing. It's a prideful pleasure that I feel, and at times more pretentious. I get a sense of, I become pretentious sometimes because of it. But it is, again, just another pleasure. But there is this big divide between digital stuff that just dissipates in the ether versus real world stuff that ingrains into you a skill. All of those hours of video games that you play, we'll just use World of Warcraft for an example, the skills you gain in the game, the stuff you gain, they're just numbers in code. I mean, if the developer went bankrupt and decided to shut the game down tomorrow, which has happened in numerous examples within the game of World of Warcraft, they had these sections of servers, which is where you go into the game and how you play at these servers, that were private people who kind of copied the game over so people could play a different version. Well, the real owners of the game shut them all down through legal means, and those players who spent those hours lost all their stuff. As well as, unless you're going to try to monetize this type of stuff, like, let's say, the Asmongold's or the online people, streamers and such, the skills are not really practical at all. And I guess that's the real question that you have to ask yourself, is it's not necessarily do you want to be a creator or a consumer, but how practical do you want your time to be spent? You could make arguments for art and stuff like that not being practical. But, I mean, there's no robots that can paint murals on the wall yet. There's no robots that can come along and, let's say, someone who has a lot of money and wants to buy something handmade for the aspect of it being handmade, made by a soul, made by human hand. There is no robot that can, like, convince that person that that's pointless. They want it. This is still a desire and still a selling point to many people. So you have that as well. Again, going back to the pleasure. If you really get into grading pleasures, if you will, to me, in my religious perspective of us all being made in the image of God, one of those aspects, and you can get super deep into that concept, but one of those aspects, most simply put, is the ability to create. I see God in many human creations. I see God in the Lord of the Rings, in the beauty of the creation. I see it in the art forms themselves and how they connect across different fields. The ability to gain the skills and the proficiencies in themselves, and how each one does a different thing, where with painting you have light and shadow, how our real world is, how we see it is light and shadow and form. Same thing how you construct something like a video game or an online website. You have these aspects with music, and this is how the ancients, people of the past, learned in schools, was by the liberal arts, which I made a long video about that. How they studied the interworkings of things like music and how it related to math and numbers and astronomy, geometry with the forms and stuff like that, so on and so on. But it's really trying to understand the real world and putting all of my focus into something like the video games or the internet, which again is a man-made creation, would be no different than putting all of my eggs in the basket of like worshiping some fantasy genre or fantasy series, like the people who get into Star Wars or the Lord of the Rings and they make their whole life centered around that. If you make your whole life centered around the broad scope of the internet, its lore, its figures, the communities on it, all of the video games, you're still putting all of your focus on a human-made creation instead of harnessing that power and trying to create something for yourself. And that's just what happened to me. It took me a long time to really discover the different aspects of real life that I really enjoyed and what really fit me right. The first one that I stumbled upon was making music. Then the second one after that was making videos, writing, that type of stuff. Being able to take in my head whatever terms and ideas and kind of vomit them out into some sort of narrative, some sort of structure. I've even been playing around with writing fantasy books, and there's something incredibly magical to it. Not magical in like a divination type sense, but something of that mirrors God through these things. Not in the hippie sense of dude, we're all God, bro. No. But in the sense of we were created by a creator. And you see glimpses when you create things. You see glimpses of that. Very small glimpses at that. But you start to see that silver lining, if you will. And then the next thing I would touch on is religion. I would say a lot of philosophical scholars and historians will say that the Enlightenment, in its push for empiricism, which empiricism is basically just the study of observable things. You hear modern science and all of its physics and all of that stuff is through your five senses, things you can basically observe through those five senses are what is true. That's kind of what we've agreed upon as a society to trust in. And again, we can get into a long discussion on there not being any actual fact, and everything's being built upon faith and trust and all of that. That's a whole other thing in itself. But that is what a lot of people attribute the loss of religion to, or the lack of care. It's that we have a new religion, the religion of science. It is enough. Obviously, it's not. You see all these people trying to become spiritual in a variety of ways, adopting a variety of superstitions and all these different things, people getting into the occult, people, the New Age, all of these things. And classical religion, in my case, true religion, Catholicism, but for the benefit of the video to talk to the most amount of people as possible, we'll just use it in a broad sense of organized religion, things like Islam, Christianity, the big ones, Buddhism, Hinduism, all those things. Nobody really, or everybody really kind of sees those as a scam. They see them as kind of like these people sitting back, watching, trying to like pull people that wander from the group of whatever the zeitgeist of the times is, and pull them into their, what they see as a cult, which some of them are cults. I'm unapologetic about that. With being a Catholic, I do view those other people as being in cults, different from the truth. And really, as a secular person, which a lot of these people who I see are the gamers or the chronically online people, they are secular people. Some believe in science, some don't give a shit about any of it. They just want to do their little stuff. And then some people think that they're a know-it-all about all of it and above it. I mean, you have leveling degrees to this stuff. But overall, the loss of religion, in my opinion, was enhanced or even started by this Enlightenment period. But really what sealed the fate of religion is the internet. Having the alternative that we have now with these video games and stuff, it gives us an alternative where it's not even necessary to think about anything else. You might get depressed, you might get sad, you might get just kind of, you feel a lack, which you will feel that if you don't actually chase after the truth. And you, instead of chasing truth, you try to subdue that urge that we all have. But when you cut out this sense of truth and metaphysics in your life, and you replace that with what a lot of people do, which is a synthetic version, the internet, its communities, its experiences, video games, all the media that we have now, from music to movies to YouTube videos, 5-6 hour video essays to just drown yourself from these desires, just getting lost in the sauce of human creation instead of seeing the beauty of human creation and allowing it to point you towards some sort of ultimate creator. And that is the sad thing with this. The loss or the lack of care for religion. Because I make a lot of the videos, my videos now, the lectures that I've done a couple times, are all centered around very deep, niche topics on theology or history. And most people will probably get 5 minutes into them, and they're just like, oh, what the fuck? Yeah, I guess they think I've already just breezed past explaining why God, or proving why God exists to them, and I'm talking about these things. But that's the great wall we have. Like, this is imagine this as this secular wall with all of its synthetic comforts and all of it. And imagine me as one of these people into this stuff. And then on this other side, you have truth in the depths of truth. And this is what they've done to themselves, is they put this wall up. And this wall is prove God to me, prove meaning to me, prove truth to me. And I'm on this other side talking about stuff down in the depths and the caves and the canals of the truth, the theology, the philosophy, the history, the caring about things other than some sort of consumption. And they can't get past that wall. They can't get past it. It's immediate just disinterest, because I've already made presuppositions of God, of truth, of meaning, and they're not able to get past that. That is the great dilemma of this. When I was lost in the sauce, if you will, of this, I'm trying to think back to how my mind was at this time when I was like 16, 17, even 18. I made the gradual progression. I dropped the video games cold turkey, but I didn't drop the internet. And I spent the time I would play doing video games, watching videos on how to do real world stuff, whether it have been pickup artist stuff or gym workout video stuff and the whole gym community, whether it be, oh, I've got me an art form now. Let me watch 10 hours a day of videos on how to do the art form instead of actually doing it. I still was not beyond this wall yet. I was inched close. I could have my ear up to the wall. I could hear the other side, but I didn't understand how to get around it. And I just replaced one section of the wall with another section of the wall. Right? I don't know if this analogy or anybody's following this analogy, but I'm trying to make it as simple as possible. As this is not a fight against pleasure or passion. This is not a stoic thing in any sense. This is a God versus secular culture problem. It is as tried as it is, the Fight Club movie, when he's like, our battle is not physical, it's spiritual. No, that's the most true thing anybody's ever said in the last 20 years. It is not physical. In the past, all the people already presupposed the metaphysical things, right? There was no wall there. They were just on that side, and the vastness of it was there. Whether they were Christians, Muslims, didn't matter. They had a faith, and they just fought physically with each other over what the faith was. But this wall was laid brick by brick under the illusion that religion is wrong because men killed each other for the right one. No, that is the most important battle you could ever have. What is the true metaphysics? We all know metaphysics exists. To deny it would be to deny truth, and then once you deny truth, you are just talking in opinions, and nothing anybody says matters. It is entirely a spiritual or metaphysical problem here, and the lack. You see certain people even walking on top of the wall. You'll see people completely still absorbed in the secular stuff, not outspoken about it at all. They're one of the, as people would call them, the chill ones, right? This is people like the chill people who are not outspoken. I'm a Christian, but I don't really care. I'm gonna still be into all of this stuff. I'm gonna still talk. No. You have to practice what you preach to prove to other people that you are actually beyond the wall, right? If you sit there and you are lukewarm and to appeal to both people on each side of the wall, like, hey, you religious people, spiritual people on this side of the wall, I believe, but all this stuff is cool. I'm trying to think of an example. I'll see lots of figures now, YouTubers, celebrities, who know? Like, I'm just trying to think of names, but I see this very commonly online now. But it's like they'll announce that they're a Christian, but then their content, whatever they are producing online to have a following, does not change. It's still pushing hedonism, pushing this stuff. There's no seeking of the truth. Like, the whole point of something like Christianity is that there are rules, especially Catholicism. The reason why it's so volatile to a lot of people, and even something like Islam, is because there are rules, there is a God, there is a way he wants to be worshipped, and there is a way, specifically in Christianity, in Islam, they literally just think you're like a slave to Allah. But in Christianity, there is a way to gain union through theosis to God, right? He loves us so much that he did the craziest thing anybody could ever imagine. Like, if you ask yourself right now, we're going to get a little bit into the religious talk. If you ask yourself right now, what is the biggest act of love you could give somebody? Is it giving them flowers? Is it giving them a kiss, a hug, telling them that you love them, giving them some sort of material thing, asking them how their day is, telling them good morning every day? Is it any of these things? Or is it a sacrifice to them? Obviously, it's the sacrifice, but there's different levels of sacrifice. You can sacrifice your time to people. That shows a lot of love. You can sacrifice your reputation for people. That shows even more love. But if you sacrifice your life for somebody, that is, there's no other form. You're literally giving them their life for your life. That is ultimately, and in essence, that is what the Christian religion is preaching. It is saying that God loves us so much, and I'm explaining this without getting into any of the theology of the Trinity or any of these things that people might have problems with. But at the bare bones, that is what it's saying, is that there is a God. He's not impersonal. He's not looking at the world and just watching it play out without any care. He does influence things. He does things, and he sacrificed himself for us to show us how much he loves us and to defeat the negation of death, which there's a lot of theology in that as well, with evil as being a privation from good and existence. It's so complicated. But people will write something off like that because they see more merit in these digital things and in these coping mechanisms than anything beyond that. And it's crazy to me. And this is not just video games. This goes for people who will binge watch a TV show for 14 hours over and over and over, do this on the regular, or movies, or, take your pick of media here. It doesn't really matter. And suppress their desire to find truth. Then there's those who think that they have found truth and will claim it, and they'll stay stuck for years and years. I've really backed myself into a little bit of a corner here because I don't want this to be some 3-hour theology, history of Christianity thing at all. But it is very important just to understand the depths of what truth is, real life can be, and the studies around it. So once we go past that, we have certain other aspects of this. We have the aspects of fantasy, of escapism. There's a couple more. This gets into Tolkien's old essay on fairy stories, which was basically his whole philosophy on escapism and fantasy and the necessity of myths and folklore, that type of stuff, which if you think about it, these were the cultural medias of the ancient world. Sit around the campfire, maybe your whole family doesn't read, but you can tell stories back and forth with each other and stuff. And then even higher up, you have the actual people in society who did know how to read, and they studied these things, etc. Right? Those same elements still apply today. This idea of escapism, which it's not 100% a negative thing. The same thing, that's why I've been so kind of careful in this video to teeter that line of consuming versus creating, and not just like automatically discrediting the consuming part, because there is, in a sense, a side where that is part of our nature, right? We are not the creator. We are not God. We have a human nature to process things and to consume. We're not all-knowing. So we have to consume things, whether that be information or when we communicate with each other, we, in a sense, again, follow me here, you're consuming that person's words, the grammar of it, the terms and all of that, and through in your brain, the functions of it, you're turning that, or if you're reading something, the symbols and the syntax, you're turning that into meaning, and through logic in your head, you're coming up with what they're trying to say. And then through a response, you do a similar process, and through rhetoric, you push that back out. So there is a nature in to just be a pure, like some of these people that I saw where they're like, don't consume, only create. That's ridiculous as well, because at that point you're only creating for yourself, and at that point that's really no better than just consuming. We are, again, still a communal species. I don't even like using that word, but we're still a communal people. We have to interact with each other and our creations and stuff. So in a sense, there is a good form of escapism, whether it's escaping into education and learning about something and separating yourself from whatever practical things you have to do that day and devoting time to educate yourself on something, or plumbing into the depths of myths and legends. There you have that as well, and there's different levels to it. And then within the fantasy camp, this is a whole video in itself, but this idea of how Tolkien put fantasy and how he wrote fantasy, where he was kind of against allegory in a sense. Like if you read someone like C.S. Lewis, his whole thing was a Christian allegory. Like if you read The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, it's like 90 pages. It's a really short read. It is just 100% the crucifixion. That the whole thing. That it's just like a lesson of that for kids. And Tolkien critiqued that. For him, these things needed to be a lot more subtle. It needed to be a complete escape without any feeling of propaganda or anything into it. And through these things, through these deep, vast creations, you mirror back and you kind of arrive through your own interpretation of the message. And in a sense, that's what we have in the real world. Is everybody has their own kind of philosophy, in a sense, of how they do things. They have their own experience. So our fantasy itself kind of needs to be tailored to that concept of being universal. So there's that. Then you also have the idea of nostalgia. And this is really this is the big one that's hard. If you spend your entire youth doing these things, you will have a great deal of nostalgia about them. Whether it be, for me, like the music in the lore in a game or in a fantasy series, or the friends that you used to play these things with and do this different stuff with, all of that. Again, it's kind of like a synthetic version of nostalgia in the real world. Like, you have like, if you close your eyes and try to imagine like a fond memory from your childhood, you can picture like settings. You can picture the rooms exactly how it was. It's kind of a shadowy concept, but you can picture those things and it brings back fond memories. And if you dwell too deep into it, it'll bring back a sense of sadness. And the same thing with the online stuff. It will do that, but there is a bigger problem with this online nostalgia than in the real world. The real world is very natural. You can dwell on these things. Some people will drown themselves in some sort of substance, alcohol, and some drug, and just let these things eat on them all day. But there's more to do. They're only in your mind, unless you like filmed them or anything like that. Again, they're only pictured in your mind. With the online and the internet nostalgia, that stuff is, like I said way earlier, immortalized. You can go back for the most part and play the games of your childhood. You can go back and watch the YouTube videos from 15 plus years ago. You can go back and read the forums and all of these things, and in these games go to the places that you spent time with these friends. You can read the chats that you had with them. Most of the time, if they haven't all gone away, you could even ask them, let's go back into the thing and start playing again. So it's a weirder thing. It's a lot more of a complicated sense of nostalgia. And you could honestly get to the point where it just eats you alive and you completely shun the real world entirely just because of how enthralled you are with that nostalgia. You start to, it solidifies that lack of care that I talked about earlier. It puts more bricks in that wall, if you will, to where what I see a lot of people do is they just keep searching and searching for more video games, more online stuff, etc. I mean, it's never enough. So that's pretty much all I had to say. I don't know how coherent it exactly was, but it is a very important thing to ask yourself. My takeaways, if you will, for this is I'm not here to preach to anybody to quit playing video games forever, to cut the internet out forever, to go be a monk somewhere, Walden or Thoreau's Walden or anything. Like, I'm not preaching any of this stuff. I'm just trying to expose people to the wall in an actual truthful way and not in like some sort of dogmatic sense of that I see a lot of people doing, like, oh, quit being online so you can be a millionaire or something, whatever these people will try to preach to you. It just comes down to a time thing. It comes down to this precious resource we all have that is fleeting. We are young. If you are young, like I still am, we are multi-millionaires when it comes to the time we have. And it should not be wasted. We should explore the fullness of this life and not just look at it through a chink in the wall at the other side and stay on it. I encourage to explore both sides. Explore all of creation. If you are someone who grew up completely segregated from the internet, you are like some cradle Catholic or something like that, and you never even touched it or anything, or an old person where it never interested you, I encourage you to look at it. And this isn't a complete shunning of the internet, because there's several hobbies on the internet. You have the web design people, which is kind of fading away, but there's whole hobbies and hosts on the internet of people who just do web design and stuff, who do visual art online, who have like blogs, it just goes on and on. You have creative tools like I am doing right now with this video. I mean, there's so many aspects. It's just another creation that is vast, but it is a creation that can very, very easily enslave you because of the power of it. It is a very powerful thing. And like something like your phone, it can become an umbilical cord, if you will. There are lots of people that I know who would look down upon the video game stuff, but then when TikTok came out, they were the first to download it and scroll it for 6-hour sessions. So, I mean, you have your thing. To be as honest as possible, I love Catholicism, and I love the vastness of all this stuff that I've really been interested in over the last 3 or 4 years. But I have to be honest with myself, and I don't believe this is nostalgia talking. There is something beautiful, just for instance, World of Warcraft, with all its flaws, about this group of people that came together, created an orchestra, instrumental music for this thing. Some of the most beautiful music you've ever heard if you separate it from the game and just listen to it on your own. It's really crazy. All the lore, the fantasy elements of it, all of that stuff, the real world influence into it. There's all sorts of references from all sorts of religions and all sorts of things that you see throughout it. The actual like tactile things that you can do and all of the things that's been developed in it. And I'm using this as one example because this can be applied to many different things online. But these worlds that are created in this synthetic space that we have created in the last 25 plus years of the internet, of really the tech boom type stuff. You can go back further, but I mean, we're really just talking about like ping pong on a computer, the Pong and stuff like that. More recently, it's this. And it's just something that we have to be aware about, as we can't prop up novels and philosophies, paintings, albums, all of this creation without acknowledging the beauty of this other half, this newer other half that a lot of people are afraid of. So I just wanted to come on and give this little thing. It blows my mind when I really start to think about it. Not only the whole stuff of the wall and the secular divide that it has brought in, but the vastness of its creation. What really sparked this was I sat down and I watched again the Warcraft movie. And not only did it bring back a lot of nostalgia, but I've been working on a fantasy book lately, and through that I've been reading a lot of fantasy in my spare time to try to become influenced and to learn by some of the old masters, if you will, of the genre. Gene Wolfe, Tolkien, of course, George R.R. Martin, several others. I got a little bit into the sci-fi stuff, but just trying to see how these like masterful writers created these alternate worlds. And I'm watching this movie, and it's bringing back all these memories of my time playing the game and all of what I remember of the creation within the game, the art elements of it. And it really just made me rethink my adopted perspective on the internet and its stuff. It just flooded into me all at once, and I was just kind of like, yeah, I don't know why a lot of people in the spaces that I occupy are so dogmatically against the internet and some video games. Like, if we're talking Flappy Bird or something like that, Subway Surfers, then yeah, that's kind of ridiculous. That's TikTok slop type stuff. But if we're talking about these grand creations, despite all their flaws and the greedy things that their developers have done over the years, but just the piece of art as itself, just like all these things that I've seen, it mirrors back that aspect of the creator to us, and it's something that we need to be aware and try to understand. Anyway, boys, that was this video. I'm going to try to develop, and I know this was kind of all over the place. I didn't really stick too much to my bullet points, but I wanted to just come on and think about this for a little bit, expand upon it, and give me some ideas for my essay. Y'all take care. Probably going to be doing another live stream lecture soon. Peace.